So I feel like we can't get off of this pod without talking about the most excited player in this draft that we talked about, especially over the last 4 days. We've talked about him for a majority of our live podcast, everything. I feel like we have to end this pod at least bringing up Jeremiyah Love, his destination, where he went, giving it to the viewers one more time that may have not seen our TikTok lives or whatever. I feel like you were very passionate about Jeremiyah Love and the destination that he went to. I was in alignment with you as well, but I'll let you start off. What do you think about Jeremiyah Love going? Every team hoped for this guy, but he went off the board almost as early as we could have thought at number 3 to the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, so I mean, there were the reports out there that the Cardinals were looking to trade out, and then you saw some reports that they would take Jeremiah Love. And I'm just sitting there going, again, well, I want to make this very clear. Love the prospect. But if you're the Arizona Cardinals, is taking a running back in the top three when you have a top three pick the right move when you're not really going to be competing for anything in the near future? You don't have your franchise quarterback. Now they did take a quarterback. They took Carson Beck, and Carson Beck's played a lot of college football, played the national championship game, played at Georgia, and then, like I said, played the national championship game in Miami. So, Carson Beck might get a chance to show that he could be that guy. And, the Cardinal skill position players with Jeremiah Love, very good. Michael Wilson broke out, got Marvin Harrison Jr., got Trey McBride, who we both really love, as one of the top tight ends in the league. So there's some pieces on offense, but in the grand scheme of things, you look at or the landscape. You're playing in one of the toughest divisions. You got three teams that made the playoffs last year. Two played in the NFC Championship game, and one of them won the Super Bowl, the Seahawks. So you got to deal with that. And you got some issues on defense. You got issues on the offensive line. Like there's just a ton of other things. And on top of that, your running back room is crowded. I mean, you got Trey Benson, you got James Conner. Those guys are coming off an injury. But I'm just saying, like, they're there. You brought in Tyler Algier. Like, there's a ton of guys there. So now you're adding to that room. So I don't know what the corresponding move is. You're gonna probably move off of Connor or Trey Benson, I would imagine, right? I don't know if you're gonna go into the season with four running backs. I mean, you could, but it's just a combination of all those things where it's like, it just reminds me of the Giants taking Saquon. Now the Giants were trying to fool everybody into thinking that they were competing, that they were going to have a chance to do something in the twilight years of Eli Manning's career, and how they handled that. That's a whole nother story. So, and how did that pan out? Giants made the playoffs, a few years later, with Saquon. But then what happened? Saquon ended up leaving. They didn't want to give him the money. And then he went on and won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. So, but not saying that's going to happen with Jeremiah Love, but I'm just saying, like, the Saquon pick didn't pan out for the Giants. Now, could it pan out for the Cardinals? We'll have to see. But right now, you have a certain window with running backs because that position ages out very quickly because of that wear and tear. Maybe the Cardinals prove us wrong, but where your team is currently at right now, that was not the pick. That's really just my whole spiel with that.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it going into the draft. Like Jeremiah Smith to the Cardinals was a heavy rumor. We didn't know if it was smoke because they wanted to trade down. We consistently talked about it's very hard to trade up. I mean, we see a team did it last year with Travis Hunter. If anybody was going to do it, it's going to be for this kid, Jeremiah Love. But it's very hard for a team to trade up and give the adequate value when it's not for a quarterback. We discussed that. Jeremiah Love, again, out of teams in the top 5, top 10, Cardinals were probably the worst destination he could have went to. We talked about how running backs production primarily happens in the early years. They translate to the NFL quicker than anybody else, and their shelf life is a lot shorter than anybody else. That's why we don't like the Cardinals as a destination for Jeremiah Love. It wasn't our favorite destination. On the flip side, I can't sit here and bash the Cardinals too much. You arguably got the best player in the draft. You got the player everybody was talking about. You got the best player in the draft. And then also at the same time, you look at Jeremiah Love, Trey McBride, Wilson, Harrison Jr., you're setting your quarterback up, if it's going to be Carson Beck, if it's going to be a first-round quarterback next year, in a pretty decent situation. We've seen worse situations than having those skill players. I also think a lot of people have compared Jeremiyah Love to Ashton Jeanty. He's going into an organization with not the best offensive line, an organization that's not ready to use him. I think Jeremiyah Love is going to be in a little bit better spot in his rookie year than Ashton Jeanty. I mean, hindsight's 2020 because, again, we already know what happened with Ashton Jeanty. But I just think not even in the standpoint of, like, the offense is better. I think it's in the standpoint of, like, Jeremiyah Love is way more – like, there's way more things he could do in a football field when you talk about catching the football, lining up as a receiver, breaking it to the outside. Like, he's so complete in his game. There's going to be so many different ways to use him. I think he's still going to have a pretty good year. And then I also want to discuss, like we talked about, the front end of a running back's years are their best years. I do think, like you alluded to, why I don't think it's the best destination. Year one, year two, you're probably looking at empty production. Jeremiyah Love is going to be a great player in the NFL. It could happen right away, but it's not going to really translate to anything for the Cardinals. That's your biggest concern. The other thing I do have to say about Jeremiyah Love, one, he's coming in with, like, generational, when you talk about carries coming in, like, they're extremely low. He got extremely low work that obviously came for Jadarian Price being in that backfield with him as well. But at the same time, like, let's not, in a sense, like, overreact to the extreme. If the Cardinals can figure this out and they either figure out at the end of this year that Carson Beck's their quarterback, or they go and have a high pick and draft a quarterback in the first round, it's not like Jeremiyah Love is going to have 2 good years in the NFL. Like, he's going to have probably 5, 6 really good years. So if they could figure this out, their quarterback situation pretty early, maybe in Jeremiyah Love's year 3, this team will be ready to go. Maybe that's their thought process. But again, like I said, like you said, would I rather him go to the New York Giants for him, a team that is more in place to make that jump in his first year? I would have liked that. Would I liked of him go to Tennessee? Not the greatest destination, but at least they have their quarterback, and they could accelerate that player's progression. And maybe if Cam Moore turns out to who we think we can, they would be in a position maybe a little faster than the Cardinals. So there were definitely other situations that we preferred a little more, but I can't sit here and, like, completely drag the Cardinals for taking the best player in the draft. But again, obviously there were better situations. Again, I think ideally, like you said, the Cardinals would have rather trade down, but when you're not trading up for a quarterback,
that way. Yeah, and this was a draft where, with the third pick, you're not going to get, a top dollar quarterback because it just wasn't that kind of class this year. And I guess it's just they didn't get what they wanted for the third round pick. And yeah, they went with, again, arguably one of the best players in the draft. So yeah, the Jeanty comparison, absolutely. I mean, this is a better situation than Jeanty because, you look at the Raiders. I mean, you got Brock Bowers and, it was a pretty weak receiving core. At least with the Cardinals, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got Trey McBride, and Michael Wilson, really, came into his own last year too. So yeah, I mean, on offense, the future is bright. It's just, now it's about finding if it is Carson Beck, or again, if they go and they have a high pick next year, you get a top quarterback there, and you try to build out the defense as well. So we'll have to see.
I do like I do like Algier being in that backfield because, again, I feel like early in Bijan's career, and it could be early in Jeremiyah Love's career, like, you don't got to use Jeremiyah Love every single down early when, again, like we said, it may not be as meaningful to you in the early stages. Like, you could use Algier in short yard situations. You could use Algier in red zone situations. Now, obviously, fantasy owners are going to get tight middle of the season about all that, but I think it would be beneficial for Jeremiyah Love in his career and for the Cardinals pathway as well. And then, like you said, for Carson Beck, I mean, I think there's a chance Carson Beck could be an NFL starting quarterback. You look at all of the experience and pro-style offenses at Georgia, Miami. You highlighted they were in a national championship. He was inconsistent. Like, I thought his best year, ironically, was in 2023, and we're in 2026 or 2024, whatever it was, 3 years ago. But I think there's a chance of that as well. Like, they took him high enough where you would think they're going to give him a shot at some point in this year. It's not like they took him in the 6th round. Yeah. With the first pick of the 3rd round. So It's going to be interesting. But again, with all the Cardinal skill players, there may be a chance that maybe they don't pick in the top 5 or top 8. Maybe they're not that bad, and then that could also be. It's going to be interesting to see with their future.
Yeah, yeah. No, Carson Beck is definitely going to have his opportunities. I mean, it'll be Jacoby Brissett to start the year, most likely, unless Carson Beck really balls out in camp and preseason.
Or something
But
happens.
one way or another, we will see him, and then we'll get an idea of could the Cardinals move forward with him or not. But it's going to be interesting.